What up, y'all? This is your Don Israel coming to you live from Lit, asking y'all to subscribe to the channel. So make sure y'all subscribed, make sure y'all liking the videos, make sure y'all commenting, and make sure you turn on your notifications that let you know when new videos are dropping. We're dropping them daily, and you want to be on it because we on it, all right? So keep it lit, keep it locked, subscribe, we out. Marduce is a drink. What's going on, y'all? This is your boy, your Don Israel, a.k.a. Liddy Fontaine, a.k.a. Pretty Liddy is what they call me. Back again with another episode of Lit, the premier platform for all things literary, swaggy, and everything in between. Today's guest is a beautiful guest. She comes to Lit, to Brooklyn, by way of Jamaica. Nicole Dennis-Benn got in the building. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So before we start, so this is part of the excitement.
Yes.
You got to walk us through the swag. So you got to stand up and you got to give us, curate the fit for us. Give us what we're looking at.
Right.
How we start, top to bottom or bottom to top?
Top to bottom.
Okay.
Yes.
So walk us, yes.
Hi. So of course, I'm wearing the 1940s vintage dresses, which I love.
Okay.
These are my favorites because they're, they have pockets and you can't go wrong with pockets.
Yes.
And colors are my thing. I'm from the island, so of course, even in fall, winter, I have to have colors. So of course, I have this cardigan here. Yeah. Bright coral. What is it? Salmon colored. And then of course my shoes.
Yes.
This bright blue that I have to work, especially given that, looking at it just makes me happy.
All right.
And, the whole look is
we got to talk to accessories. I think.
All right, well,
yes.
That's the thing too.
Yes.
Again, being Jamaican.
Give us the wrist. Show the flick of the wrist.
So here it is.
Yeah. Yes.
So this I got from a Nigerian friend of mine in Harlem.
Yeah.
And she knows how much I love jewelry. So she made this for me. These are the salt beads around my wrist. And I wear them every day.
Okay.
Of course, then here are gemstones. I'm a big fan of gemstones. Okay. And then, of course, this is from Martine's Dream in Crown Heights, Brooklyn.
Oh, yeah, I remember that's one of your
Yes, and
picks.
So these, I love buying from independent designers. Okay. I really, give them their due. Okay. And so most of what I'm wearing are actually by women.
That's dope.
The dress, this is, of course, Trashy Diva. There's a woman in New Orleans. She's the one who has this beautiful boutique. Right. And the cardigan as well. Okay. And so for me, being a writer, I just love this this beautiful little shimmy look of still youthful but serious.
I like that.
Yeah.
Youthful but serious. So thank you for coming into the show today. So you said you watched the episode. So you've watched an episode. You're acquainted with the show. So you know about the drink.
Yes.
So it's the Marduce drink. So you got to pop the top and drink to the leaves.
Definitely.
Ready? Okay. Yep. I think that's.
Wait, hold on.
You might have lotion on your hand.
I have a trick. Oh yeah, I have lotion. Thank you.
So good.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Yes, cheers.
Thank you for coming on the show.
Yes, thanks for having me.
All right. You have
really good. This is really good.
So that's the apple juice. That's just the Martinelli's. That's like the real apple juice. After you drink this apple juice, it ruins you from ox. Like, it's just like, you can't have apple juice that ain't 100%.
Yeah.
And this
very
is
fresh.
This is the Douce Cognac. You're going to put the top on that and swirl that around.
Yes.
Let me do another.
Yeah.
Do another one. All right. Cheers.
Cheers.
Again.
Very good.
Thank you.
You guys are very, that's why I love coming out. I love, of course, bumping into you, Yadon. And then even coming here. Yeah. This is amazing.
So, background. We met at Y'all Jesse's. We met without knowing we met.
Yes.
Because you were online for Y'all Jesse's book event at the upper, I think, west side of...
Right, 82nd Street. The Barnes & Noble on 82nd, yes.
Yeah. And I had taken a picture of you with y'all, and I saw you at the train. And then we were at Housing Works.
Housing Works books,
and I was like, oh, snap, I took a picture of you.
Right. All the coincidences.
Yeah. So it's crazy how, like, a lot of times... And one of the reasons why I was staying there, because I know that people in the literary world don't take the best pictures.
Right.
Like when you go to events and they're like, "Can you take a picture of me with this person?" And they'll take it, and they don't care about backlight, so it's not really a good picture. But then the person who asked feels guilty about asking again.
But you were meticulous though.
Yeah.
You actually had us, me and you had us look at the picture to see if we liked it or not.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you agreed to do it one more time, which I think it was so generous of you.
Well, I mean, one, a lot of places don't have lighting that's friendly to black people.
Right.
So a lot of times when people take pictures, it's just the assumption that the first time is right. Whereas I know that most technologies and most things that's created aren't created with black bodies in mind.
Right.
So I always want to make sure that it's right for us. Plus, it's nothing worse than having a moment that you want to share but can't.
Right.
Yes. Like you get the blurred picture of Beyonce. You're like, man, that's, like I
know.
want to share this.
That happens to me all the time. Yes.
So like you only get these moments. These moments are very finite, and I want to make sure that the moment is captured correctly.
Yes.
So
and it was. It was.
Well, thank you. So give people the background of who you are, where you come from. This show is a lot about breaking into a space where people don't know, who writers are. Mm-hmm. And so I think it opens the conversation. So just start the conversation about yourself.
Oh, wow, heavy. So who am I? So I am Jamaican. I came to this country at 17 years old to the United States.
What part of Jamaica?
From Kingston, Jamaica.
Okay.
Then later on Portmore, St. Catherine. But mainly from Kingston, because that was where my childhood memories were. Mm-hmm. And so when I came to America, it was more like, coming to college, being pre-med. But I went through an alternate route because, I didn't come as a student on a student visa. Right. I came via my father, who was the one who filed for me. And he was able to take me into his home. So, of course, I started off by going to a local community college in Long Island, in Garden City, Long Island. And then from there, transferred to a 4-year college. Yeah. And that was really where America 101 was realized for me. There was a culture shock because here I was now in Ithaca, New York. I'm at Cornell. Yeah. And that was where I actually was immersed. I was by myself. It was cold. It was dreary. And that was my awakening to being here. Like, I asked myself constantly, like, why am I here? And, I didn't really talk a lot because I was very self-conscious of my accent. I had a thicker accent then. I mean, I have an accent now, but it was thicker back then.
I got some friends whose accents are thick.
Right. Right. And people would always ask me, can you repeat that? Like, what you said? So what I did, I actually I became very internal. So I started journaling more and more. And the more I journaled, actually the more I realized that I loved writing. Like I really enjoyed it. And that was really my way of communicating, perhaps not only to myself, because I actually ended up figuring out a lot through writing, but also communicating to like an invisible force. Yeah. I don't know, like, that was where I vented. That was where I spoke about my homesickness. I was really homesick. And I remember even calling my father, telling him I want to go home, and him saying to me, well, you're in America now, this is homesickness is going to always be with you. Just deal with it. Yeah. And I remember thinking, man, how do I deal with it? So, this whole writing became more to me. It was actually more, it was a coping mechanism. And that was how I was able to just like continue doing it. Though I was so afraid to major in writing. I was pre-med throughout college, thinking, well... That's a very West Indian thing to do. Exactly, very West Indian thing, right.
Everybody's a registered nurse or a home attendant.
Yes, or a doctor, or a lawyer, or engineer.
Yes, to the careers. But, so all of my friends are from either Trinidad, Barbados, Guyana, Jamaica. Most of them, black, so...
Right.
One of my best friend's his mother's, she's an educator. But then his two sisters, I think, are both in the nursing field. Right, and then my other friends nursing field, and I'm like, it's so. And I went to high school literally up the block from here, and a lot of the West Indian people or people from the Caribbean, which is also includes Dominican Republics and Puerto Rico's, a lot of people go into medical. Yeah, and I've always wondered, what is the phenomenon? And I'm not asking you to answer for everybody, but what is it that's so it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I really, the thing is that coming from home, from Jamaica, right. I know ingrained in in all our minds growing up as children is that there are certain careers that would actually make us. So mostly working class Jamaicans, for example, our main goal was actually to come out of our class. So schooling it was drilled into our head. Get your education and you actually be the one to pull yourself out of a certain class to get to the upper class.
Right.
And we're going to talk about that more in our interview, but class is very important in Jamaican culture. And so, if you're born in working class, through education, you can become upper class. So you have the Jamaicans who want the MDs, the PhDs, and the engineers and the law. Yeah. Right. Those are the Jamaicans that I met at Cornell who, we were pre-med together. But then, of course, you have the other Jamaicans who are the nurses, the policemen, and the teachers who actually, they're working class as well. But when they come here, they have children here, and those children, probably, thinking, well, that's another route, because at least you still have a name to what the career is. But in terms of how we get around each other, in terms of describing what we do, when I graduated from Cornell and I told people I was pre-med, their eyes lit up. They're like, wow, doctor, you're going to be so great. Give my father, my mother, bragging rights. And it was something to say my daughter is going to be a doctor. Even if your mother is a nurse. I remember going to school with this girl who, her mother was a nurse, but she actually studied to be a doctor. And for her, that was a big deal as well. So it was so interesting how, the arts never came up in terms of what we ought to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
so there's a parallel, I'm Black American.
Yeah.
And I grew up here, and it's there's definitely, it's weird. Not weird, but it's I definitely see the parallels in the culture of the ways in which Black parents, whether they be from the West Indies or within, I think parents in general, they just, that pride of being able to talk about what their kids are doing.
Exactly.
I had a mother
exactly.
Who would say, I was a 7, I was an 80 student. I was my son gets straight A's, and I used to be like, Mom, no, I didn't. She's like, I'm over here trying to stunt for these.
Yeah.
Shut up.
It's this respectability thing, right? You gotta be respectable, and that was how our parents were. My wife is African American as well, and I do see where our cultures intersect. There's so much alike. Yeah.
So go back to the homesickness.
Yes.
What was one of the first things that you missed from home?
From home, oh God, the food.
Okay.
The food, because again,
so
there was no food, Jamaican food anywhere.
See, if you lived on Nostrand, you would have probably
If I was on Nostrand Avenue, I would have been fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Or Flatbush Avenue. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But so you went from this good food,
right, to nothing,
homemade to cafeteria, student union chicken fingers.
Right. And the thing is that I realized that I was spoiled because, of course I was living with my mother, my grandmother. They were all, doing my laundry. They were cooking for me. They were doing everything. So when I came here and I was in school and, I had to do my own laundry. I had to, get my own food. It was kind of another thing too. I was forced to grow up. And that was something else that happened. So, in addition to the trauma of moving to a new country, it's also just growing up, really. Yeah.
Could you give language to that trauma of moving to a different country? Because you were on a panel a few weeks ago with
Garnet,
yes. Parishas Harpour and Roberto Gonzalez and Ruman Ali, Ruman Alam.
Yes.
And who else? It was
Porchista.
Porchista.
Yes.
So it's 5 of y'all, and then Walter Mayumba, from the National Book Critic Circuit, moderated it. But it was a lot of conversation around immigration. And one of the ironic things about listening to immigrant stories as a Black American is identifying with every feeling, but not having the sort of tangible
the words.
Not the words, but the tangible narrative that y'all have of moving from a place to a place. Right. But still feeling that sense of displacement.
Right. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I would say the first word that came to mind was painful. It was actually really painful. And I never thought about that in itself before, in that, I was just going through motions.
Come in a little bit more. We got a tight frame.
Yes. Okay. I was going through the motions, and I found myself mostly surviving. Like I said, I became internal. I was writing a lot, but I think I was also going through a partial depression. But I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that it was depression until coming out.
I don't think Black people across the world.
Right. Until, meeting the right person or seeing the right textbook or something. And you're like, oh, that was what that was. Right. So that was really, that's something that, I had to get through before really during the process of establishing myself as a new American.
Yeah. But what's interesting about, and I think that this is like a form of subversion and resistance, is that like people who come to this country and retain their accents. Because to me, it strikes me as a choice.
Yes.
And so what is a part of that choice?
For me.
To retain, like, not just your accent, but the things that accent comes with, right? Which is like the sort of animosity towards it.
Right.
The sort of treatment as if, like, you know, you could have spent more time here than in your home country, but yet you have, in many ways, still like the accents of the country. So what triggered that? What informs it? Like
what informs it? I stopped. So I used to try hard to be understood by Americans. I used to definitely, especially, when I was at St. Andrew High School for Girls in Kingston, we were already told not to use Jamaican patois. It was bad for us. So already, you know, I
was smoking cigarettes.
Right, exactly, right. So like you're telling a group of people not to speak the way they speak, you know. So that was actually reducing or taking away our identities.
Right.
So already I had it in my mind that if I speak patois, then I'm going to be looked at as uneducated or uncultured.
Right.
So with that in mind, when I came to the US, I practiced even more. I was like, well, you know what? These Americans would understand me when I project, when I, you know, quote unquote, articulate my sentences, enunciate, all these things. So I was doing that, and especially at Nassau, at Cornell, at University of Michigan, where, of course, Middle America, where one of my supervisors pulled me aside, and she told me, she was actually the first person who told me this, you know, your accent is a little thick. So I want you to actually just slow down a little bit so you could actually be understood by the parents. I was doing orientation for new students, and this woman felt it was very, it definitely seemed unprofessional if I had a thick accent, or that the parents would somehow be a little nervous about that. So it really hurt my feeling, but at the same time I wanted the job. So I was like, let me try harder. So I tried, but then when I met my wife, and I remember going through, I did my locks on East Flatbush Avenue. And I remember an old friend of mine called to me, and she was talking patois. She was like, what one, Nicole? A long time I not see you. What you did there? And she was talking to me this way, and here I am, like, you know, poised, responding to her. I'm fine, you know, I've been living in Brooklyn, you know, I just graduated, I'm working right. And then here's my wife. She wasn't my wife then, she was my girlfriend at the time. And she's like observing this as the African-American observer. She's observing this exchange, and she's like, after my friend left, she's like, did you realize that you were talking to her in standard English and she was speaking to you in patois? Why did you feel the need to only speak to her like that in public? And that was a question that just like halted me. I was like, what? Like, I didn't realize that I was actually doing it.
Yeah.
And so it was actually that realization when I said to myself, you know what? That F this, I'm gonna speak the way I speak. You can say
fuck if you want.
Okay, all right.
This is what it is about. You can talk your shit.
All right, good. So, I was like, no, after that, I'm gonna be me. I'm gonna try my best to be me. And what I can't salvage at this point, which I deeply regret, is slipping in and out of patois. My wife said that I do it. I don't hear myself do it. But I really, you know, actually after that moment, tried my best to retain what was left of that Jamaican accent.
You know, and this is like, you know, I was reading this book, and one thing, you know, I did, in listening to you talk about like the patois, one thing I did appreciate was like that being there, because you know, so much about American culture is about, like, they call it a melting pot, right?
Right.
And that's supposed to connotate a positive thing, like, oh, we all blend together. But then I think what happens also is that some flavors get confused for others.
Right.
And so, and I say this because I remember, like, you know, in the 90s, and this is like, what's the word? Like, I don't know. I don't know the word for it, but the phenomenon of it is like, I was a kid who was raised, my mother like dreaded my hair, and I was confused for Jamaican.
Okay.
They're like, oh, what's going on?
Right.
And it was funny, they used to like call me Shaba and stuff like
that.
I'm like, then like only years later, I'm like, Shaba never even had dreads. So like, how much? But then I'm growing up Black American, and the only understanding of West Indian I had, the only frame of reference was Jamaican. So when I meet my Guyanese friend, I'm like, oh, so you listen like, you know, Bob Marley, and they're like, we're
right.
And so like being around all my like West Indian friends, like I had to learn the nuances of the different,
yeah,
and so different things, and like for example, like I know, like, you know, Bayesians say like shite,
right,
like
yes,
of, like it's like these little things that if you're paying attention
right
to the nuances, you can see them. And so like what this book does capture is a lot of nuance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, because you guys spoke about a essay that you had gotten published by the New York Times, where like they had wanted some of the speech to kind of be standard English,
right?
But how much of that do you feel robs the essence of, and this is not an indictment on the New York Times. This is just when you make those choices to translate yourself,
right,
from Patois, that is within itself a language,
right,
to standard English. Do you feel like things get lost in that translation?
Yeah. Because, you know, I write Patois in dialogue.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel if I write about working class Jamaicans, you know, I tell our untold stories. That's how I look at it. And to have two Jamaicans speaking to each other on the page, unobserved, and they're speaking standard English wouldn't be authentic.
Yeah.
You know, working class Jamaicans, you know, speak to each other with our dialect intact, unless if they were like me or like my character Tandy in Here Comes the Sun, who have gone through these British schools that beat Patois out of you, where you're really, really trying hard not to slip into the dialect, you know. And so when I'm writing, I hear my people. I have to hear and see them at the same time, and I'm hoping that my readers would also hear them and see them as well. You know, forcing them to slow down a little bit to understand. And I actually make sure, you know, within knowing that not only Jamaicans will be reading this, but also Americans and people from different countries. Right. So providing a little context, not over-explaining, but just a little context. And, you know, spelling out certain words so that they can actually get, you know, what the characters are saying.
Yeah.
But I find that Here Comes the Sun and also my other works, it's kind of like a rebellion as well. Because one thing I mentioned, and I keep going back to this, in terms of what writing means to me, is that writing is my way of salvaging my identity. And my language is my identity. You know, who I am as a person. And so for me to eliminate all of that from the work would also be me also silencing myself. So I have to really write to maintain the voices of the people who are often unseen and unheard. Right. So that's...
So what you said, there was a point that I had within. So could you give a little overview of the plot of the book?
Yes.
And so just so we can, like, as people listening, they kind of be able to follow where I'm gonna take it.
Yeah.
But
so Here Comes the Sun. Yeah. So Here Comes the Sun it follows the lives of three women: a mother, Dolores, and her two daughters, Tandy and Margot. And, you know, it's set in a fictional town in Montego Bay, Jamaica. And these women are actually dealing with the fact that a huge hotel resort is about to take over their community of Riverbank. And, you know, how they survive that. And it taps into race, identity, displacement, class, sexuality on the island, which is we often sold to the world as a paradise or as, you know, a place where Bob Marley's from or the weed. But, you know, here is the stories of the working class, the people behind the fantasy that we don't usually see.
And I think that you do a great job of even showing how these expectations of how to keep the fantasy alive causes death.
Right.
For each character.
Yes.
Its own sort of.
Oh, I like that.
And well, you know, I try to bring new language to books when I talk about them.
Yes.
But
love it.
One of the things that you have, like, for example, like Tandy and Margot. Tandy is the youngest one.
Yes, 15 years old.
Yes, so she's the one in private school, and Margot is the one who works at the resort.
Yes.
And what you see a lot of between Margot and Tandy is, like, Margot wanting Tandy to be the thing that she can't be. Right. At the same time, like, not thinking about the expense that comes to Tandy.
Exactly.
Right? Like, all these studying for exams. Like, she comes in and she goes, did you study for your exam? Did you study for your exam?
Right. And it speaks to what we were talking about earlier, where the pressure is on that child who's in that good school to achieve so much more than what the family has achieved in the past. So here's Margot, at 30 years old, saying to her sister, "You're going to be the one who's going to help us to pull us out of poverty, move us away from riverbank. You're going to be the doctor." Meanwhile, Tandy, is saying to herself, no, she wants to be an artist.
And she wants to be a kid.
She wants to grow up. Yeah. And also, being a teenage, we're already insecure as 15-year-olds, right? There are so many things going on. But in addition to that, Tandy feels the need to bleach her skin to become as lighter or as clear, we call it clear complexion in Jamaica, which, is another story.
No, I think that's a part of the story.
Right. Clear. In Jamaica, when we say clear complexion, it means light skin.
Okay.
And Tandy bleaches herself because in a country that's also sold on the fact that the lighter you are, the better. More opportunities, more acceptance, right? And Tandy strives for this, and that's one of the things that she's saying, without saying it, that if, for her, she feels more worthy. She'll feel more worthy as an individual if she lightens her skin.
Yeah. And it's
so much internalized.
No, and that's why I said one of the things I think that's to me is a testament of your skill with this book is how many types of dynamics and complex social issues get written into the book without becoming the issue itself. Like how you can write about the bleaching of the skin on the way to something else,
right?
Because you're navigating sex, Jamaica as a sex tourism place, and but it's not this polemical thing against sex tourism, which is not to say you're for it,
right?
But you're just describing it as it is,
right?
And there was one thing reading this book, I got thrusted back to reading Giovanni's Room with Margot and her particular revulsion of the way she felt about herself with the desire she had to carry out love for somebody with the same sex.
Right. Yes.
And so immediately I'm like, is this autobiographical, not in the relationship, but in the feeling like you had no right to love the person that you wanted to love. Because that's what I saw with, to me, a lot of what Margot is trying to do with Tandy is correct a lot of the things she feels is wrong about herself.
Right, yes.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, the irony of, she ends up, starting the sort of, she becomes,
the madame.
In a lot of ways. But she's recruiting girls who are the same age
as Tandy. Right.
So it's just this very, this irony, and I want to know, how did you, was that something that you purposely wanted to do? Was that?
Yeah. It really showed Margot. First of all, Margot is one of my favorite characters. She's actually the closest one to me. In that, here Margot, she genuinely feels that she's doing something great for her sister. All throughout the book, what she tells herself is that she's doing this for Tandy. For Tandy to become better, for Tandy to be a doctor, for Tandy to not end up where she is. But yet still she's willing to sacrifice her own body and the bodies of young girls to achieve this dream.
Yeah.
And that in itself was me trying to parallel that the exploitation of the land itself by tourism and the exploitation of women's bodies. And really showing that there is a direct relation. Right. And so Margot, our country, for example, has been sold to the IMF for years now.
What's the IMF?
The IMF, the International Monetary Fund. We owe billions of dollars. To the IMF.
Well, who is the IMF though?
International Monetary Fund. So they loan us money.
Who's they? No, no, because it just seems like some phantom. We owe Chase. Who's Chase?
Yeah.
We owe Chase.
Right.
Who's run Chase?
It's really I guess it's a conglomerate, banks, the European American banks. Okay. So of course, because we're a third world country, and one of the things that happened was that in order to pay the bank back, we had to limit our exports. So Jamaica no longer exports a lot of stuff. We mostly import, right? And so our number one revenue becomes tourism. That's the main way we make our money.
Level, extort, some real,
Right. So that's the thing. That's why we sell our souls for tourists, right? For tourism.
Yeah.
And so you look around, you visit Jamaica, you're going to see another castle in a week or two, because that's how, the country survives.
And what's his name? I don't know if you... No, I think you were on a panel. No, you probably weren't. With
Sophia, last year at the Texas Book Festival.
Oh, no. Yeah, so, no, it wasn't you on the
Okay.
But this was the same conversation had come up about the ways in which tourism transforms place.
Yes.
And it robs you of place.
It does. Right? It really does.
And, you know, like I said, like, it's just listening to these things and, like, what's prevalent. So, like, what's so heavy in this book is that sense of, like, nothing belonging to the people.
Exactly.
Who should have access to these things.
Right. The beaches, not ours.
Yeah.
You know, not unless if you're staying at one of those resorts or one of those villas, right? That's how you can have access to the beaches.
Yeah.
And that's unfair to me, you know, and it didn't become apparent until, you know, I'm driving on the North Coast with my mother who would spot beaches where she herself used to go to for free and it's now closed off. You know, so one by one you see these beaches now all being reserved. You know, so you wonder really who has access to this so-called paradise, you know, who has access. And so we realize that the access belongs to the wealthy Jamaicans who don't even have to come to America or Canada or the UK to survive. They're thriving on the island now. And so, you know, which brings me to my other point.
Right.
Those Jamaicans that you grew up with in Brooklyn, you know, the nurses, the teachers, the ones, the Shabarank, the people who call it Shabarank, which that's like so funny. But Jamaica gets its other money from that, from people coming to this country, to Canada, to the US, to the UK, and sending back money home. Right? So that's another way of revenue for the country. So they don't really try to have us stay there. You know, they don't give us the scholarships that we need, especially for like a Margot who's highly intelligent, but she just didn't have the opportunity. You know, like Jamaica doesn't really try to retain, you know, our brains or creativity. So most people just flee the island, and that's a tragic as well. But I wanted to really write the lives, who humanize the Margos of our society.
Right. And these are, you know, just a lot. And one of the people you said that was your throughway into writing is the writer.
Right.
What's her name?
Wait, who?
You know.
Oh, Zora Neale Hurston. Yes.
I'm trying to, I love this lady, and then you just like.
Oh, I think, you know, you
missed the dunk. I
you
just
have to
threw it off the
immerse
backboard.
me in Here Comes the Sun. So I'm like, wait, huh?
Nah, yeah, I'm just, we riffing. But
yes. But yeah, Zora Neale Hurston.
What was the quote? Because you said you had a quote from her that made you take this writing thing seriously.
So it was Zora who said, you know, there's no greater agony than the untold story.
Ooh.
And so for a very long time, I was so afraid of telling these untold story. You know, given that, you know, yes, we're coming from a country that makes its money from tourism. So you yourself become an ambassador subconsciously. So every time somebody asks you, oh, we want to go to Jamaica, you're like, oh, really? You should go. You should definitely go. Oh, you'd love it. You know, we're trained to do that.
You know what? I will tell you, literally, being from Bed-Stuy, I have that inner battle with when white people ask me, is Brooklyn safe? I'd be like, I should tell the answers no. Because you grow up with the stigma of you come from Bed-Stuy,
it's like
and
do
the
or
shit
die.
is dangerous. Yeah.
Right.
No. And you know the most ironic thing about neighborhoods that's dangerous for people who live there is that it's not dangerous for white people.
Yes.
You know, like,
that's true,
a lot of if white people decided to take a convoy through like Kingston.
Exactly.
Nobody touching them. I mean, it's not saying nothing like would happen to them, but like the rules.
Right.
Like we know how to move around white bodies.
Yeah, even when I wrote the essay last week for the New York Times, holding hands up on Fulton Street, you know, seeing the white lesbians who could hold hands and could even kiss in the street.
Yeah.
And no one says anything to them. Like there's a safety net around them. And the black bodies.
No, it's a different danger.
Yeah.
And so I remember literally like walking down Tompkins Avenue and this white couple, and like, I mean, like, these are like white people. Like the dude was from Cape Cod. I was like, oh shit. And he was like, hey guy, do you feel like this neighborhood is safe? And I was like, the fact, like, what I said was like, do you feel safe asking that question? And he
asked it to you.
Yeah, and he blushed, and I was like, the fact that you feel comfortable to ask that question should let you know how safe this neighborhood is.
Yeah,
right.
That's so interesting.
So, but it was what I didn't know, like before gentrification had made itself pronounced in Brooklyn, because I've been learning that gentrification is not just the appearance of an artisanal mayonnaise shop and white people.
Right.
There's a lot of like political shit that happens, like rezoning and all these things that even create white people feeling safe enough to come.
Right.
Was before the appearance of white people in Bed-Stuy and a lot of parts of Brooklyn, the way in which you created safety for your body if you lived in Brooklyn was you made your neighborhood appear as dangerous as it had to be safe other places. So if you were from Brownsville or if you were from Bed-Stuy, there was a safety granted to your body because you were from a dangerous part of the So if you was from let's say Brooklyn Heights,
right,
in the early 2000s, late 90s, it's your neighborhood was a chump, so therefore you were now a chump by virtue of the neighborhood you were from. So when we were younger, the whole thing was playing up the dangers of our neighborhood. Somebody just got shot yesterday. You're damn, you. And people would deduce, all right, if you from these projects, then that means you must have some of that.
Right.
But then when gentrification started to really happen, like you said, it's now the impulse is to make it nah, Brooklyn is not bad.
Right.
If you mind your business. But type of that type of portrayal of the neighborhood to white people will put you at danger with black people. And not black people, just any black people, but black people who had understood that danger was a sort of safety.
Right.
And so when I'm listening to what you're saying, it's just this is literally the actual thing of what I'm saying of hearing people who are from other countries describe what's going on. I'm that shit happening
anywhere.
Yeah. Not any but it's it happens particularly to people who are disenfranchised in the places they live.
Yeah, because I'm listening to you too, and I'm hearing displacement. It's happening in Bed-Stuy.
Yeah.
It's happening in DC as we speak, Philippines. But when I use the word ambassador though, it's more like selling the country. So we have ultimately one people. That's our motto, ultimately one people, meaning that, the ultimately one people was actually devised to silence any conversation about class or race disparities on the island. So people, just so that foreigners can see our island as that paradise, right? So that's one of the things that I also challenge in my writing. Another thing too is also that notion, again, the ambassador saying to the foreigner, it's a beautiful country.
Right.
But when you say a beautiful country, you don't think about, inner city Kingston. You don't mention those places. You mention the resorts in Montego Bay. You actually partake in conversations about, I went on vacation in Negril, which happens to me all the time. When I say I'm from Jamaica, the first thing someone discloses to me is it's wonderful. I've been here for my second anniversary and I got married there and I this and I that and I that. And I was well, okay, but at the same time, they're not seeing me, the individual, saying I'm from Jamaica. They're seeing the Sandals commercial. They're seeing the Bob Marley photo. They're seeing the ultimately one people, that this paradise. And so what I force people to do in my work is look at the people who are not living this fantasy, but the people who are actually striving, that their lives, their how they make a living is based on this fantasy.
And so that's even to the ambassador thing is that ambassador thing rings true for I think especially with the transformation of Brooklyn, there has been more of a necessity to be an ambassador. And I think especially when, and I'll speak for myself with this, of being a black writer from not the particular not the literary class who's in writing, is to make also my writing an ambassador likable people and likable narrative. And so this whole selling of an idea of blackness versus and I'll say this in terms of writing writing essay when I used to write essays that I when I was in my sort of James Baldwin bag. And by James Baldwin bag I mean the polemical, I'm gonna write and tell white people that they fucking up. Right. And they're gonna love me for it. These essays were being written from a standpoint of not complete honesty because I was selling something. I was selling a dream. Yeah. But then when I started writing about the sort of everyday of being in Bed-Stuy, and it was sort of the ways in which whiteness did not have the type of control that white people expected to have over the neighborhood, wanting to know, thinking that whiteness was pervasive in everything, and it was there was actually some places in our neighborhoods that whiteness had no place. Right. Or what we did with whiteness, the way we subverted it and what we did with it showed that we had a certain form of agency that I saw unnerved a lot of white people because they didn't understand that. Right. The subversion of power. Yeah. Which is also what this book does, right? It subverts the expectation of what the fantasy is. Right. And I'm wondering for you now, with readers coming through. You wrote this with these intentions. Mm-hmm. How much of this do you has come through in the way readers have received your work or what they bring to you?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. One of the biggest, first of all, I'm so happy about the great positive reception the book has gotten, mm-hmm. Not only in Jamaica, but here and abroad. And most of the comments, I was trained earlier on not to read reviews, but most of the reviews that I read earlier on when the book first came out and I was a brand new writer, was the ending. They're like, oh, it's so sad. And it was mostly white women who were saying this, right? It's so sad, And I had to declare to myself, first of all, I consulted my mentor in my head, Toni Morrison, who said to an audience once that I'm not a fantasy writer. I'm not gonna write happy endings, right? And a happy ending could be an epiphany. It doesn't have to be somebody skipping off in La La Land. And so I had to make that clear on each and every panel where, I look in front of me and I see a sea of white women asking this question, why is it so sad? And I said, you know what? Here Comes the Sun would be happy if right now in Jamaica, my best friend who also went to high school with me, also working class, could actually be sitting in this chair right now as an author herself, right? Tina White, great writer, but where is she? Did not have the opportunity to pursue her dreams because there she still has to be a security guard, working, 9 hours a day or more, right. To make ends meet. And so until those Jamaicans, those working class Jamaicans can actually have platform, can actually have a voice, can actually have opportunities in that country, then why am I, as an artist, as a creator, why am I creating a fantasy? Yes, you do have writers for that, but I'm not that writer.
Right.
And so I have to make that very, very clear, and I have to write, even as I'm working on my second book now, writing away from the white gaze, writing away from the questions, oh, but this is so sad, or, oh, what's that, right, just telling the story authentically, right? Telling the true story of those who have been silenced, those quote unquote untold stories, bringing them to life without shying away from, questions or shying away from the fact that, oh my gosh, like am I going to appeal to so and so and so?
Right.
Right. So that's really...
and that's the central question of also Margot in terms of sexuality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this question of appeal and like being the right kind of woman.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
And like, the main part, especially like in the patriarchal culture, being the right kind of woman is not being, lesbian.
Right.
Not being a lesbian. And, you talk about the real dangers that come with navigating not only in a female body, but in a female body that's also perceived as like being, I don't know if like being like female adjacent, like you're not even the actual female because you don't like men.
Mm-hmm.
And like how much of her body safety is also like about denying her body's pleasure,
right,
and the desires of her body.
Yeah, for Margaret's survival,
right.
She definitely, like, her decision not to come, love Verdine fully is survival. But also Margaret, even if Verdine Moore were a man, Margaret doesn't, her character, she doesn't know what love is. You see how her mother Dolores treats her. Her mother was the first one to tell her nobody loves a black girl, not even herself, right? She told Tandy this, and that's what she put in Margot's head as well. And that was something that I wanted to toy with Dolores being the voice of our post-colonial scars. And as a black mother, being the first to tell her black daughter that the world is not going to give you a pedestal. So let me be the first one in this home to let you know that, so that when you step out in the street, you're not shocked. And Bell Hooks has a great essay about that too, about the black mother. But one of the other things too, in terms of Margot and her body, sexuality is very important for me to write, especially as a black woman. And not just like same sex, but a woman's sexuality.
Because it's fluid.
Right. So even writing Margot's encounters with the men.
Yeah.
In the hotel,
a lot of it is about power.
Right. And for her, exactly. She's using her sexuality. She's wielding it. And so for her, it's actually her trying her best to reclaim what was lost.
Yeah. One of my favorite quotes in here, I'm gonna have to get some footnotes, but it was the thing about sex being easy for her, and it's where she sort of just fell into, this is embarrassing.
Oh no, it's fine.
No, but it was a quote because I think it was.
I
think it reminded me of what it was when like in sex, in chapter 4, when you say in sex she finds a deep calm, a refuge in which she hides.
Right.
And like using sex as a form of hiding.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And I think about that because like, you know, a lot of my earlier sexual experiences had been about hiding. I would say. In terms of like it was something I rushed to do to get over with, but it wasn't. It was my way in which I told myself I wanted to know somebody, but it was actually a way in which I was also communicating I wanted nothing to do with them.
Right, that's interesting. The way how sexuality is used in that context.
Well, because it becomes like the way in which you talk about besides violence, like sex is one of the other ways in which your body can be weaponized. Right. So it's like how you use your body to work out on another. Like, and I think about like the language that like a lot of boys that I grew up with, we had the language like, oh, we ask girls like, when you gonna let me be, right? Like the violence of that sentence,
right?
Not when we gonna have sex, but when you gonna let me be, right? Yeah. And like, you know, all this language that's like violent towards the very thing you're supposed to be like necessarily like gentle towards.
Yeah, I had to really, you know, this is one of the that was one of the challenges writing a book like Here Comes the Sun, because here you have Margot who's highly sexual, you know, I mean, in terms of her, what she has to do for a living or under the cover, but also, you know, her having to also deal with the fact that she was also a victim of sexual assault.
Yes.
A survivor of sexual assault, I should say, you know, at the hands of a stranger when she was only 14 years old. And, you know, how she deals with that, you know, internalizing so much and how she ends up dealing with that. Yeah. Saying that, well, you know what, if this is the one thing that I can actually use to get ahead, then let me use it. And I had to be very, be very cautious when I did that, because I didn't want to have her come off as like, you know, overtly sexualized, but she is, you know, and I had to deal with a lot of stuff, internal stuff as a woman, as a writer, as well, while writing Margot. She was one of my most challenging characters because, you know, in addition to that, she's also lesbian. And at one point I was afraid that, oh my gosh, you know, our reader's going to only see the lesbian story. And I didn't want that to happen because the book, as you mentioned before, has so many layers. Right. And I wanted people to see that and see that Margot is a highly complex character, right, dealing with all these issues as a working class Jamaican woman trying to survive. And that's very essential. And, you know, it just happens to have, you know, be in love with a woman.
Before I ask you to read something, I'm going to ask you something else, because this is very interesting. How much of the layering that's there do you feel like it's your responsibility to like not put there, but like how much of that responsibility is on you to figure out? Like, so like I think a lot of times when we talk about art, we also often treat like the readers, the listeners, the people who, I don't know what to call them on the other side, the people who would, the audience. So oftentimes we like kind of treat them like they're not working from their own
understanding,
assumptions, and we could have written everything there, and they could choose not to see it,
right? Or
yet they probably have no framework,
right,
or frame of reference to see it. So we often take those things as failures on our part, as opposed to an interrogation on the audience. And so even like in a panel discussion, like it's seldom a time when you get to interrogate the audience, right? Whereas, but as the artist, you're always interrogating, and so I wonder how much of the layering that you wanted to write into it was motivated by a sincere sense to have the layers there versus this feeling of you have to make it pronounced that the layers exist.
But that's the thing. When I was writing it, I wasn't even thinking about that. It was just a story. I was just writing a story and it just happened. And, you know, because I always even say as a writer, you know, you're subconsciously, you're actually a soft sponge. So whatever is happening in your world or whatever you have lived through or happened, it somehow is a part of you. So even as I was writing, I realized that there are things that I'm writing about that actually, you know, those are things that I've seen. Right. So, for example, I could be writing a scene, for example, of Tandy getting ready for school. But what's the first thing she sees in the mirror? Her dark skin. And, you know, maybe focusing on that, given that, you know, I myself had been that dark-skinned Black Jamaican girl. I myself had grown up, you know, feeling insecure at one point because I was darker skinned. And, you know, somehow that seeped in, you know, it wasn't my intention, but it somehow seeped in. Yeah. And so most of, whenever I hear people say, oh, wow, the book is so layered, I didn't do it on purpose. It's just
but that's what I mean. Like when people
happens.
say like books are layered, it's like, well, aren't people layered?
Right, that's the thing.
That's because it's like to say that is like to say that is to say what?
Yeah, because it's not like you sit at your desk saying, "All right, I'm going to write about all the injustices."
No, but that's what I mean.
Right,
so a lot of times these books that are so layered get treated that way as if it's like you were surprised by the layers.
Right, yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that's less of a writer's brilliance, which is not to rob you of the brilliance, but I think it speaks to a certain ignorance of a reader.
That's powerful. I always tell my students too, read carefully, because, read ourselves first, before anything. Because
cool.
we're highly...
It's a soundbite.
Yeah, we are highly complex characters ourselves, So the way how we move through the world, we're not the same person here on this panel as we are the same person at home or to our parents or grandparents. So we're highly complex. So the same way that comes off on the page as well, or should come off, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You just stopped I don't know if you truncated your...
No, but it's true.
But, so could you read something? Please?
Yes, definitely.
Read one of your favorites. I have favorites, but I want you to read one of your favorites.
Whew. I have many. My favorite part to read is actually Tandy's bleaching scene, but that's a little long for this panel.
The show,
for this interview.
Going on the panel?
Oh, right. Show. My God, you see, that's where my mind is
used to being on panels like this.
Exactly. Goodness, I just came off one, so no. But this is so chill. I love this. All right, I am gonna actually read a part of. Well, you know what? Let me give you Dolores because.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the mother a lot.
Right,
yeah,
we never spoke about Dolores.
Read some of her.
Yeah, so this is Dolores. So like I said, Dolores is a mother character. She is a vendor. She sells souvenirs at the stalls. That if you're vacationing, this is a woman who tries to get you to buy everything in the stall. And like Margot, she wants Tandy to be better. She wants her to go to medical school. This is what she does this for. So without further ado, let me just introduce you to Tandy's mother, Dolores. Dolores comes close to Tandy, her arms open as if to embrace her. Tandy's prepared to rest her head against her mother's big breast. She's ready to drop her shoulders and let her mother rub them. Tell her that it will be all right, that Clover got what he deserved. The embrace is a sweet one Tandy had forgotten until now. Her mother's love is as vicious and domineering as her personality. Once it's felt, there is none other like it. Tandy relaxes in Dolores' embrace, allowing herself to be rocked back and forth like a baby. But then it was cut short. Slowly, Dolores pries Tandy off her and holds her at arm's length. I want you to come to your senses and turn that boy in. Everything happened for a reason, and that was it, Dolores says. Do it for all of it, Tandy. He was defending me, Tandy says. The devil is a liar. Him kick you down, but it don't mean you can't get back up and use the tool him fling give you. What Clover did is history. Something long gone. So put it behind you and do the right thing. Him is a brute, mama. Shh. You go and pay for cursing the dead. Dolores pulls Tandy closer and rocks her in her bosom. She smells like the green banana she sliced up. She runs her fingers through Tandy's hair as she speaks. You and that boy Charles shouldn't mix in the first place. As me say, if you go pick up with a street boy, then you must at least get something out of it. Forget about what Clover did. That won't set you free. It's enough women it happened to, and it didn't kill them. What will set you free is money. Don't say me never teach you that. I send you to school for good reasons, yes? But it's also for you to learn common sense. You think because Charles say him love you, that you worth something? You think because him say him want you, that he mean it? That is not wanting him after and when him get it, him run? What is this love, eh? You don't know nothing about no love. Love is foolish. You ever see love put running water in a pipe? You ever see love build a roof over their head? You ever see love doing free education, especially to those children who can't afford it? You ever see love hungry visa to get far from this rat hole? What can love do for you? How you want to love a stranger when you don't even know what love is? He will just take advantage of you and walk away. You have to get your returns in dollars, not cents. And besides, who would want a naive girl like you? But suppose him did really want you. Could you really love somebody who's an absolute fool when it comes on to these things? Somebody who green? You wouldn't want that, and neither would he. You're giving him everything for free. Boys like trippy girls like that. They take one look at your black face and know you're desperate enough to spread your legs at the first compliment. They see your true color before you tell them your name. They know they can't tell you anything, and your black self believe it and accept it. How we so used to getting the leftovers. Who you know really love a black girl for more than what's between our legs? You's a pretty black girl, but it's my duty as your mother to teach you these things. Put something in your head, child. You know how much money we could have get? $10,000 US. That can take you from here to eternity. Pay for your education and everything. Use your head, child. You can't place more value on this boy and his foolish love over money. If it means so little to you, then you lose everything. Remember this. Nobody love a black girl. Not even ourselves. Now get up and get your pay. Woo. So that's Dolores for you.
Yeah.
And I think what it also speaks to is that sort of violence as a form of protection between black women, and especially mothers and daughters. Like, and a lot of my maturation as not just a writer, but just a person, a man, black man in the world, is seeing that more. Like, you know, like there's a quote, there's a line in Random Family by Nicole Dennis-Benn where she said, girls have responsibilities and boys have bikes.
Yes.
And I think about like I had responsibilities, but the expectations of the responsibility was never mine. Like I was never expected to be responsible.
Right. Yes.
Which is different than having the responsibility, right?
Exactly.
So like it was like I was told to like take the garbage out, but it wasn't really expected. Right. Like I wasn't letting people down when I didn't do it.
Right. Yeah, and that's
it was
one of
kind
the
of
things
being
that...
like, well, like you're kind of like, this is what men do.
Right.
So it was kind of written off where it was like when my sisters or I seen like, you know, girls I date or whatever, like, and as a boy, you sitting there like, why she can't never come outside and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, because she has responsibilities that she has to answer for. Like, this is not something that you could be like.
And one of the things I wanted to make sure to put, as well as the sexualization of our young girls.
Yeah.
You know, one of the biggest responsibilities of a Jamaican young girl is warding off the attention of grown men.
Yeah.
And that happens constantly all the time. I wrote about it as well in the New York Times. In terms of losing innocence as a Jamaican black girl.
Right.
And that's one thing I wanted to write against in this work, where, you know, here Tandy, like her sister, like Dolores, were all survivors of sexual assault. Yeah. And really how they actually internalize certain things. Yeah. You know, and I wanted to get to that because, you know, more and more people that I encounter back home, women, you know, more and more that come to me, even after publishing the book, they'll come with their stories. Yeah. And I said, wow, you know, all these years, most of us have been sitting on our silences. You know, feeling
sitting on silences.
Sitting on our silences, thinking that it would
be that should be a book title.
Yes. Well, you know,
underline that.
Another person I love, Audre Lorde, who says, you know, our silences cannot protect us. Yeah. So the fact that we are so socialized to respect our silences, to respect shame, we're sitting on certain untold stories again. You know, this time around, in Tandy's case or in Dolores' case and Margot's case is being victims of sexual assault, or survivors, I should say, of sexual assault. And so challenging women to come forward with their stories, you know, because many years, like women will be sitting on this for many, many years, thinking they're alone in this struggle. And as a writer, as an artist, I also feel responsible to tell stories that people usually would be afraid to tell. And so that's really, you know, one of the questions that you asked before our interview was, you know, how can people better analyze your work? And for me, the biggest question is writing against certain things, certain boxes that society put us in, especially as women. Yeah. You know, and for me, it would be definitely the sexualization of our bodies. So I tend to play around with that a lot when I'm writing.
So Danny, pass me my bag, brother, man. For coming on the show, you always do something special. Throw it off camera. This is very matter. But, you know, It's a double barrel bag. Okay, it's in this one. Boom. This is for you.
Oh, thank you.
That is
amazing.
Yeah, you go open that. That's,
wow. Beautiful gift. Oh, yes.
So
I finally got my lit pen.
Yes. So for being lit, you got the pen. So before you get out of here, we need a rundown of things.
Yes.
Tell us where people can buy the book.
Definitely. So my book, you can get it anywhere. I am a huge supporter of independent bookstores.
So then so you can't get it anywhere. Get it at independent bookstores.
At independent bookstores. If you're not living in an area where there is an independent bookstore, Amazon is always there. There's Barnes and Nobles. Right. So the book is available anywhere. It's also available on you can actually get an audiobook as well.
That's good.
Which is great.
Did you do the reading for it?
No, an actress. They hired an actress. And she's brilliant though. She's really good. No, she's Trinidadian. Yeah, she's Trinidadian, yes. Okay. Which, her looks is definitely different from mine, but it's
yeah. But you know what's funny? All right, so I was reading the recent article that Ta-Nehisi had come out in Atlantic about the first white president.
Yes.
And I saw the audio and I pressed play on it.
And who was it?
It's some white guy. But in the piece is like he says nigga a few times. I'm like, I don't even want to see.
I didn't.
I don't want to be there for that.
Yeah.
So I just turned it off. But I really feel like I think audiobooks would benefit from having a writer read.
I would love to read. My next book, I'm definitely gonna see if I can actually be the one.
We're not sitting on the sides.
Right.
Next thing, any events coming up?
So my next event is actually the Las Vegas Book Festival and the James River Writers Book Festival. The James River Writers Book Festival is in Virginia. Of course, the Las Vegas Book Festival is in Las Vegas. If you go on my website, NicoleDennis-Benn.com, just go to the events tab and you'll see all my events. I'll be at NYU this fall, Princeton, Barnard. And so, all these things you can actually access on my website, NicoleDennis-Benn.com.
And then where can people follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter, on Instagram, and all that is all on Facebook.
You don't got to talk on the mic. You could. It's a strong mic, and you have a very strong presence. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all there. Dennis-Benn. Yes. Okay. So Twitter is _Dennis_Ben. Okay. And the Instagram is just Dennis-Benn. Now, your literary swag, has it updated since we first did this? Like your writers is the same? It has updated. So tell me, literary swag, 3 writers, 3 clothing designers. Oh my gosh. So 3 writers. Toni Morrison, Zora Neale Hurston, and Edwidge Daticat. Okay. Yes. Clothing designers. Yes. Martin's Dream. Yeah, and also I love Remy. She's a Nigerian designer, Harlem. And also Tiffany, who, she's Trashy Diva, really. So she's the one who designed these cute 1940s dresses. Okay. New Orleans. All right. So this has been another episode of Lit. This has been another Pink Pig Productions. Follow them at Pink Pig Pro. Follow me at Yadon. Follow the show at Lit Platform on all the platforms. Follow my man Surreal Jules. This is another episode of Lit. Nicole, thank you for coming. Thank you for having me. Yeah.